Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a bit of a Geopolitics Mask-Off combination special. Today, we are going to be talking about Ukraine and the situation within Ukraine, and I am joined by some wonderful guests. The first thing I'm going to have to say, though, is that I'm outnumbered. They're all vets, but one of the special things, at least for this particular episode, is that we have officers within the chat today. So this is going to be absolutely great. The first one, you can catch him out as Colonel Dan11 on Twitch, and I believe he streams on a couple other platforms as well. He is basically a former colonel in the Air Force, the last that I checked. So, Dan, if you want to give yourself an introduction and let people know who you are, go for it.
Sure. I'm a 32-year vet. First 6 years I was enlisted. I was on a nuclear weapons recovery team, kind of a thing that was out there called ESTs, Emergency Service Teams, before the FBI got into the nest business and found out there was a lot of money to be made. Got commissioned after right at my 7th year, took command of a security forces unit in New Orleans, did Desert Shield, Desert Storm as an enlisted guy, did Panama, Grenada. Later on in my career, after Khobar Towers, a friend of mine, and I wrote a white paper for the Pentagon on how to keep Khobar Towers from happening again. Kind of a fictitious thing just to make some people happy. 90 days later, I'm being told I have a black budget. I'm going to El Paso to a Biggs Army Airfield. We're going to stand this unit up that we designed, and we're going to promise that Khobar Towers never happens again on a global level. Did that for 37 deployments. 2003, I got moved into an arena called Military Support to Civilian Authority. That's where I truly came in contact with the National Guard. Shortly after that, I was quietly asked to join an organization called COG, which is Continuity of Government, run by some wonderful people out of the Pentagon and the SecDef's office. And I did that till 2014, working level 1, level 2 threats globally, trying to figure out what might possibly destabilize our nation, what are the potentials for destabilization, and what are the ways to preempt it. 2014, I decided I'd had enough. You know, it's been 1982 to 2014, that was enough. And I jumped out, did some advisory work for a while, still do from time to time. And then discovered the wonderful world of Twitch last year in 2020 with some great people in this community, which I was completely clueless about. And I've been streaming Monday through Fridays on global events since then. And Tyberius, I know you and I have already had a really good conversation about the Ukraine and the Russians and their capabilities. So, I thank you for dragging me in here tonight.
I was lucky to have you. I didn't know if I was going to be able to get you on the fly, but thank you for showing up. Next, she is a former Army Ranger, went around kicking ass, taking names in the name of Uncle Sam, and may or may not have been in Ukraine. We cannot confirm or deny that, but Samantha, introduce yourself, tell people about yourself.
I'm Samantha Banana 4 on Twitter. I did paperwork globally for the United States Army for a long time. I'm really good at Microsoft Excel. No, just kidding. That's an officer. So PowerPoint presentations, Excel spreadsheets, and talking to my commander, since I can't tell my own commander to suck my dick. But anyway, yep, served 13 and a half. Went in 01, got out in 2013, spent my life doing stupid things for stupid people. Had a lot of good times, made a lot of good friends, a lot of good stories, a lot of shitty stories. I've taken shits in places that you wouldn't believe. Yeah, so fuck it, let's talk about Ukraine.
Gotta love having the enlisted here. All right, next, he used to fly Harriers for the United States Marine Corps. He's been a new friend to the community, but a very good friend of the community. Welcome, Twisted Aviator.
Hi, how's everybody doing? I'm Twisted Aviator. That's Twisted Aviator on Twitch and on Twitter. That's Twisted Aviator without an underscore on Twitter. I flew the Aviate BNA Harrier for the Marine Corps, VMA 231. I was involved in the invasion of Iraq. I unfortunately got out early because I developed a heart arrhythmia, which has been since corrected, and I am now flying corporate business jets for a living. I also fly for fun. I have my own personal aircraft, and Like to follow geopolitics. Like to talk politics. Just enjoy a little bit of everything. I'm also an avid storm chaser. So in the spring, you can find me. And well, I guess with today's weather, even in the winter, because just back in December, I was chasing storms on the 10th. You can find me chasing down the tornadoes, trying to drive inside them. Yeah, I'm working on building an armored vehicle to do that with. Bought a Ford Explorer, stripping the body down, adding Kevlar panels, and should be a good time. So let's talk Ukraine.
All
Wait,
right.
you gave us all that info about you except for your favorite flavor of crayon.
Oh, it's got to be purple. Purple is always the best.
Had to ask. Had to fucking ask.
God damn.
All right. And then last but not least, I'm Tyberius D. I do not have any official credentials when it comes to the DoD. However, I am a geopolitical enthusiast. I used to watch people like Ian Bremmer, Peter Zion, and company. And yeah, I like to actually go about the world, look at the data, and try to understand the world is a far bigger place than, you know, the small podunk place that I come from. But without further ado, feel free to check me out with the Geopolitics with Tiberius D show on my channel, or catch me when I get to host Mask Off, the Mask Off podcast. I can't talk today. I don't know what's wrong with me. Anyway, today we're
It's
talking.
all right. Words are hard. We know.
Words are really hard today. I don't know what it is. Anyway, without further ado, we're talking about Ukraine, and I want to make sure that I get this question down real quick and get the framing the way that it was originally presented to me. So give me like 10 seconds here because I forgot to do it. Okay, here we go. Russia has positioned itself along its borders with Ukraine in a very threatening manner. The UK is threatening severe sanctions, but is that going to be enough? What are the consequences if Ukraine falls to the Russians with no military pushback? So I want to spread this out a little bit more. Number one, should the Russians be taken as a serious threat to Ukraine? And number two, what do you think their actual chances of invading Ukraine are? And we'll start with Dan.
Yeah. Well, it was funny when you texted me a while ago and asked me if I could come on the panel. I was actually in a discussion, a chat group with some people about the correlations between Kazakhstan and Ukraine right now. But to answer your question, I think we're above probably the 65% line on the Russians, and there's some much deeper reasons for that than just the reason of Putin being totally redlined against the Ukraine joining NATO. As you and I talked about before, there are some systemic issues there with the Russians in Western Europe that have percolated since the fall of the Soviet Union. Putin's desire to reshape, redesign, as you and I were talking about, segments of his military to do what he ultimately needs to do, and that's give Mother Russia its buffer zone again in Europe. We're talking about a culture that's been invaded for 1,000 years from Europe. So I would, if I woke up anytime past January 15th, because we'll see the rhythm of the discussion starting on the 10th and the 11th. If I woke up anytime past the 15th and found out Donbass had, brigade-sized units moving into it, I would not be surprised.
All right, next is Samantha, which is actually decammed. Are you with us, Samantha?
Yeah. So anyway, if you don't already if you don't think that they aren't already there, you're already wrong. Like, we've documented evidence, multiple visual confirmations by multiple groups that have been sent over there for, reconnaissance purposes, or maybe just keep an eye on things that Russia's already been in through at least Crimea, as well as like Donetsk, right? There's video documentation of this. There's multiple groups that have been sent for reconnaissance that have verified this. Verified troops, either Russian troops, either rolling there without a patch. Same Russian uniform, Russian military vehicles, just no patch. No patch, no. I mean, America does the same thing. I've done it. Can't prove anything. So it's like, yeah, no, I'm just wearing a uniform. I bought it on the internet. Okay, got it, guys. No patch, no crime. So we already have evidence of them, at least in Crimea, if not as well as like Donetsk, right? So invasion, in a sense, has already happened. They strong-armed the voting there for the voting to become part of the Russian part of Russia again. So the only thing right now is their position there in a threatening manner, but at least we have some like time buying because Russia is now having to deal with helping out like the situation like Kazakhstan. So there's more people for Russia to kill. So it's kind of like a little like sidebar thing they're doing that's kind of delaying whatever they're doing in Ukraine right now. But yeah, no, I think there's already a small scale invasion has already happened. And we have verifiable evidence of this. So just, where does it go from here? What are their actual intentions? And, that's what I'd rather figure out. Like, what the fuck are they trying to do is the bigger question. Do I give a fuck about Ukraine? Not really. It's a bunch of old white people who really cares at this point. But like, why? Why Ukraine? What's the benefit of having Ukraine when there's other things they've been focusing on with Pakistan, with Syria, with Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Kazakhstan? What's going on with Ukraine that makes that a priority for them? And what's their steps after this as well is the bigger question. So more important questions.
We'll definitely be getting into that. Twisted is up next.
All right. Well, to build a little bit on what Colonel Dan was saying, Putin is an old KGB hardliner, and in my opinion, when you were talking about the buffer zone, that's absolutely correct. I feel that Putin wants to reconstitute in some form the old Soviet Union. He wants to get that buffer zone, that sphere of influence, that Eastern European, and I feel like this is his first step towards doing that. In addition to that, if you really look at the demographics of Russia, Russia's a dying country. They're dying economically. They're an aging population. The life expectancy in Russia is significantly lower than most of the developed world.
Especially if you're gay.
Yes. But heavy, heavy alcoholism, heavy drug use, I'm one to speak as I sit here and smoke a cigarette, but a lot of smoking in Russia. They're an aging, dying population. And if you equate a country to an animal, there's nothing more dangerous than a dying animal. I would even put the possibility of an invasion even above that 65% mark that Dan put it. I would say that it's probably closer to around an 80% mark, just because of those factors. It's a very dangerous situation. And as far as Samantha as to why Ukraine, the U.S., while Ukraine is not a NATO member, the U.S. has in the past made a guarantee of Ukrainian sovereignty. So that's why it's such a concern for us. Whether or not the current administration will act on that guarantee remains to be seen. But that was something that was said, and I would, as terrible as a battle with Russia would be, I would hate to see us turn our backs on our potential allies and people that we've made promises to. So, yeah.
Okay, so I talked with Dan on this one, and we actually disagreed a little bit on this. So the part that I agree with Dan and Twisted in particular is that the Russians are largely wanting to reconstitute the Soviet Union to some degree because that was their heyday, and also it was, or at least one of their heydays, and a place where they were a lot more secure in their, not only their geographical borders, but also in their just general security overall, is that they had more equipment, they had more, excuse me, I cannot talk today. They had more equipment, they had more resources, they had more population, they had all these necessary things that help make a geopolitical force, and since the Soviet Union collapses, that they're in a far worse state than what they used to be in. Here's the part where I don't agree with my friends, and I would say that the likelihood's probably actually around 30% or maybe even less. The thing that I'm looking at is that the leadership within the Russian Federation, most of them aren't really elected. They claim to be elected. It's largely rigged. Most of them are actually former spies. And when you are former spies, is that while you have to, get your hands dirty with, dealing with other spies, is that you understand intelligence work. You understand what happens when data gets thrown on your table and what that actually means. And what Twisted actually said is why the big reason why I don't think the Russians are going to super commit to something that's openly blatant as a full invasion of Ukraine anytime soon, and that is because the Russian people are dying. Their economy is struggling to basically return to any kind of normalcy post-2014 with the sanctions. And then on top of that is that you had a Russian birth collapse or about 1991, 1992, when the Soviet Union collapsed, as you can probably imagine, but they never recovered from that to a large degree. And because of that, if you are literally going to launch a war into a country that is 44 million people, even if, you could steamroll Ukraine, which I think the Russians absolutely could, is that you have to occupy that country. And you're going to have to deal with the response from possible NATO members, if not most of Eastern Europe, not really wanting to play ball with this. Especially if they cross the Dnieper. But anyway, long story short here is that I don't know if the Russian leadership is willing to sacrifice what few is left of their youth on a war that will probably just see them bleed faster. So that's the calculus that I'm weighing in my head from the geopolitical lens. I could be wrong here. Maybe T90 start rolling across the border next week. But
well, it doesn't make sense though. Like the rebuilding of the Soviet Union, right? If you look at the other members of the Soviet Union, like you have Ukraine, Georgia, Belarus, Uzbekistan, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, I believe Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan,
yes,
Tajikistan, Latvia, and I think Moldova, right? What benefit? All of those countries are already broken, sad, sorrow-filled, declining, dead economy, worthless. It is more money to invade those countries than those countries are worth. Rebuilding the Soviet Union would just be bleeding money out of Russia's asshole. Like it's just light their entire economy on fire because that's what they'd be doing, right? It's a waste of money. There's no benefit other than gaining land mass and gaining a population of old, dying Eastern Bloc, grandmas with their fucking headscarves, right? And their fucking boiled duck soup, which is fucking disgusting. Okay. Learn spices, bastards. But no. But there's no benefit, right? So like, other than like expanding borders, other than just like expanding Russia's borders or recreating the Soviet Union, there's nothing to be gained. Like if you look at the economies, there's like GDP from these countries. What are their goods? What services? Like there's no benefit to almost any of these countries. I mean, fuck, Belarus is already blowing itself up for fuck's sake. Russia doesn't need to do it. There's no benefit.
While I agree with that, I'm not sure that Putin is a fully rational man. He is very, very intelligent, but I'm not. I don't count on his rationality.
I think he's a tad bit sociopathic, and I think he's definitely a type that he will get his hands dirty if he feels that it's necessary. But to answer Samantha's question in particular, the one reason why I think that they will invade Ukraine, or that they could or would, is that everything that's largely east of the Dnieper is people who are either ethnically Russian or have grown up their entire lives speaking Russian and identify themselves as Russian. That's a huge...
Most of them were the people that voted for those portions. At least I don't know if I was talking to you about it earlier. Mm-hmm. Most of those people are the people that voted to become part of Russia again.
They only got about a third tops of those people, because you got Luhansk and Donetsk, which are the separatist regions, but you still have significant areas there that are peoples that still talk or speak Russian and identify as Russian that aren't part of the separatist regions. Now, and I've actually heard some conflicting data regarding the peoples that are in the surrounding regions. Some of them have actually kind of gone the other way and become Ukrainian nationalists, while others have said, no, we really need to rejoin the motherland.
Yeah, but you can make it. That's where you can make a compromise. Was I talking to you about this earlier about the redraw borders as a show of good faith to try to calm tensions?
I don't think I had that conversation with you.
And it was Sam the Human, right? Whatever.
I mean, let's also not forget
say, cool, these areas voted for it. Like, if you want to be part of Russia, cool, move to these areas. You can be part of Russia. It'll be like former Ukraine, whatever. Show of good faith. Maybe calm Russia's titties down a bit, and until we can figure it out.
So there's a really bad thing here, and Dan, it's going to be open panel now. So if you want to chime in at all, feel free to do so. The one thing that I'll say is twofold. Number one,
he's mocking me.
I don't know about that. Strategic barriers. The Dnieper is the best place to actually be able to hunker in and defend yourself with if you are dealing with a Western or European assault. So I think that that is their minimum border that they want to get up to, is that you can hide behind or you can hunker down behind the river. If we're talking about the actual part that you're talking about, is that the problem with Ukraine is that the eastern half is largely pro-Russian, the western half is largely pro-West. If you actually chop off the eastern half and send it off to Russia, what does that make Ukraine? The next NATO member.
Okay, but check this out, right? Mm-hmm. It worked in Berlin, right? So we just built this big wall, okay?
No!
Right down the middle.
No, stop
me.
Make
Mexico pay for it?
Yes. My people won't pay for that. We're too busy working.
But let's look at one other piece here. You were talking about what the economic reasons were. Odessa.
Odessa's
port facilities, Red Sea access.
The biggest one is access to the Black Sea. The thing is,
didn't Russia already block off Odessa from Ukraine?
Largely, yes.
Yeah, so cool. They already have access. Great.
It's one thing where you block somebody, and another thing where you're using it for your own shipping routes. Dan, right. You look like you're about to have a migraine over there. What do you got, buddy?
He's dealing with an enlisted asshole from the Iraq War.
I'm gonna tell you that.
I apologize, sirs, for my behavior and my language.
Hey,
you can't NJP me anymore, so deal with it.
I've been called worse by worse men, so don't worry.
It's okay.
One thing I think we all need to understand about Russian war planning, when the J-35 in the Pentagon sits down and actually starts putting a war plan together, like 1003 Victor for Iraq, or 1003 back after Desert Storm, Desert Shield, I will tell you that and Tyberius, you and I have talked about this. There is a fallacy in the West that when the Russians do war planning, that those that come to the table with economic factors get a vote on the table, and they do not. If you look at the way the Russian General War College is run, there is no equivalent in the Russian war planning rooms of the Department of State, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Transportation, all these federal agencies that we have in our government. When we sit down to do a plan, I sat down with more idiots at CENTCOM doing 1003 Victor from other federal agency strap hangers that had opinions, that had questions, that didn't decide with what Fifth Army lead planning team wanted to say. The Russians don't operate that way. So I think it's dangerous. It's not, you can't just ignore it. You're right. But it's dangerous to assume that the Russians, Putin especially, and his General Officer Corps, which is extremely loyal to him, would sit down and allow economic factors to decide the next 100 years for Russia's borders. I mean, Hitler understood full well that when he invaded in Europe, he was going to take an economic ass whooping. And the Nazis actually planned for 30 years of depression at the end of the war. But they went to war anyway. So there's a little bit of reluctancy I think we need to inject here on, and just, we're a capitalistic monetary society, and we put a lot of weighted factors on that when other governments, especially our enemies, make decisions, and we have to look at the battlefield from our enemies' eyes. And I don't know that the economic factors of this event with Ukraine meet that. I will tell you, historically, Ukraine is the breadbasket of Russia. When Russia couldn't feed itself between 1918 and 1935, It was the Ukraine that fed Russia. It's the perfect, it's wheat. It's like a giant Iowa. And so strategically, I think the Russians are looking much deeper down the road than just, hey, we're trying to push Western Europe back. We're trying to limit NATO, who lied to the Russians, by the way. This is an issue that Putin sees for the rest of the 21st century and maybe beyond. So we've got to be careful anticipating that the economic factors are there. The second thing I'll say, and I'll shut up, is I've watched and I've talked to a lot of good friends. NATO's doing some funny things. The intelligence community knows exactly what the Russians are doing. They flew over the Russians 12 hours before President Biden spoke to Moscow. They know, our intelligence community is second to none as far as to seeing signals intelligence, NavSat, all that stuff. And NATO is now doing some things that we see NATO doing, especially old NATO leadership, saying that's interesting. NATO's retooling some things. They're not repositioning themselves. But when you see NATO actually trying to get ready to be not caught off guard with something larger than Ukraine, that's a pretty ominous sign to me. So yeah, this is, as you and I talked about, Tiberius, this can easily be the topic of 2022.
I don't disagree with that, and I was trying to bring up the order of battle for what units they were moving secretly, because we saw back in April that there was a massive buildup. They moved it something in the order of about 3 divisions into the area. Of course, they pulled out after their drills were done, that they usually do in the early part of the year, and then of course in the summer months they go down to the Caspian. From the information I got is that the better part of a motor rifle division, but I can't figure out which one, was the one that they moved in secret. And it's not the ones where you just load it up on rail cars and you send it on down and everyone can see what you're doing and you can see the motor pull from satellite. It's, hey, we're going to deploy active camouflage. We're going to stop every single day. We're only going to move at night with no lights on, down the road. That's usually what you do before, you get ready to invade a place. So I don't blame the United States for playing alarm bells. But the thing that I've said consistently is that either the Russians were doing an exercise to show that they could do it to themselves, and they got, they just got caught, or they were actually preparing for an invasion, and they got caught, and I don't think they're really wanting to do it while everyone's paying attention. So I think they're going to back off for at least a little bit.
I will tell you that in the last week, one of the major conversations in Europe has been there is an extraordinary amount of combat engineer units in the Donbass region now. As somebody was saying a while ago, yeah, the Russians are there. The little green men have been there since 2012. They just failed in Kiev in 2014, so they dropped back to the Donbass region. And oh, by the way, the Russians have issued over 400,000 dual passports in the last 4 months for the Donbass region, so they can raise their right hand. They can raise their right hand and say, we're going into Donbass to secure our people. And so that's a little trickery, but pay attention to the clearing units. Organic, like rifle units, mechanized units, they have their organic engineers. But there's a level of clearing, breach operations and clearing operation units now coming into the picture. The Germans are talking a lot about it. And that's unordinary. And they're pulling them from other areas in Russia that you probably typically wouldn't see. These units already did their summer training. They're done till next year. And yet they're now in the Donbass region, and they're specifically designed to clear the path for the armor. That's a pretty telling sign. There's just funny things going on below the radar that make some people tilt their head.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. I haven't been told about the engineers, so that might be newer, it might be older, and of course I don't get all the information that I would like to have. But
have they moved much in the way of air assets into the area?
Yes, Crimea especially. Crimea has probably quadrupled the number of fighter aircraft. No tankers. They don't need tankers. They can turn the legs easy enough. But they have quadrupled the number of fighter aircraft. in the Crimea.
So when you say fighter aircraft, are we talking air-to-air assets, or are we talking more like Su-25s that are going to be able to?
I would say air-to-air and tactical.
Yeah, I mean they're going to have both. They need air, they need to do air dominance, and they're still going to have to pound the dirt too. I mean they got to do both.
Usually, when the Russians move in air-to-air assets, that just kind of gives me the impression that they want to use aerial denial. But if they're moving in air-to-ground assets, that's one of those ones that will pop off for me because.
What about rotary wing assets?
I couldn't talk about that.
Yes. Belarus, the rotary wing, which tells you Kiev's a target. I mean, the push out of Belarus is going to be towards Kiev. They don't do any of this. They may start out in Donbass to make it a slow escalating thing to see if the West can turn it off. I don't see a full-scale invasion. There's a Russian plan that was on the books that draws a line from Kiev down to Odessa. I mean, just split it right down the middle. You know, in 2015, 2016, we thought that's exactly what the next move was going to be, but they took Crimea first. Absolutely. The Belarus stuff almost looks like the classic Russian Red Army second wave. You know, you put your main fighters in, you exhaust them a little bit, and then you push a second wave in. I wouldn't be surprised if they do go. I would think Kiev's a prime target, and they're already there. We all know that. All of us have been in the military. We know how many special operators are in Kiev now.
Yeah. My food just arrived, so I am gonna decam while I eat because nobody wants to watch that. So.
Not a problem. Okay, so this is a little bit.
And I will be right back. I'm gonna go grab it.
Not a problem. This is a little bit in parallel. So we're going to talk a little bit about Kazakhstan, and we're going to talk a little bit about Germany and the rest of the region. So I'm still getting news pickering in from this one, and that is Kazakhstan is going into an area of civil unrest. This was supposedly because of raising food and fuel costs. I've got information blackout here because the media isn't a reliable source of information for me, and basically anyone in the intelligence community hasn't really been talkative to, at least to me. So Dan and Samantha, what do you guys have regarding Kazakhstan that you think the audience should know?
Go ahead, Sam.
Sure.
I blabbered enough.
Wait, information?
Yes. What do you know about Kazakhstan that the audience should know?
Russia's killing people over there. They're just doing Russian things. That's pretty much like all. We're not officially providing any support. Outside of before Kazakhstan, actually no. Before Kazakhstan, it was about 4 or 5 months ago. We had talks and we were putting forward bases in Azerbaijan, a small forward base there, and I believe there was one more spot. I forgot. I remember talking to you about this when I was checking the hitter feed. It might have been Kyrgyzstan, but I know one was Azerbaijan, and maybe Kyrgyzstan. To kind of help put a preventive measure around this situation getting any worse over there in the Eastern Bloc, right? However, Kazakhstan popped off before we could do anything with Kazakhstan, greatest country in the world, yes. However, not so great anymore, motherfucker. It's on fire. But yeah, as far as that, we're not offering any official support, and I don't know if any of our unofficial allies, like not NATO allies, but unofficial allies, are doing anything on our behalf. And I have not talked to anybody that is in the region, and even if I did, I wouldn't be saying shit. But I honestly have not talked to anybody. I don't know anybody that is remotely anywhere near that region right now.
What do you got, Dan?
Tyberius, think in terms of NGOs. Go out there, do a little Google research, and you're going to be shocked when you see the number of Western NGOs that are operational in Kazakhstan, in all the stands, Shitmanistan, all of them. But the NGOs in that country is astonishing. And there's NGOs, and they're like the Freedom for Democracy League. And all these Air America type bullshit, Evergreen Corporation bullshit that's out there. The Russians are absolutely, positively convinced that Kazakhstan cooked off because the West wanted to say, look, if you want to pressure on Ukraine, we can create troubles on another 2,000 kilometer border of your nation. And the Russians tonight, as we speak, are absolutely convinced that everything going on there is coming out of the White House, out of this administration. Whether it's true or not, NGOs, I hate them. I hate having to deal with them. They're the flavor of the day. They're the way we do, non-descriptive warfare nowadays. But if you go back and look, I think you'll catch some data that will make you curious as to who's been in Kazakhstan, how long have they been there, and what are they trying to do. And that absolutely has the Russians convinced that this is our doing.
The one thing that I want to bring into that conversation is that Kazakhstan has a border with not only Russia, but also has a border with another major power in the region. That's China. And China has been active in Kazakhstan affairs. Now, one of the terms that I've been told was part of the Russian-Chinese alliance that they're trying to build out is that Russia was going to handle Europe, China was going to handle the Asia or the Indo-Pacific, but Central Asia, largely being the former Soviet states, were kind of a hands-off zone, where if they needed to react, Moscow and Beijing would have to have a chat, but largely it was just kind of let everything run as far as it was going to go. Now that puts all that in question. Dan, would you confirm with that or deny that, and then go from there?
Yeah, anybody that thinks Moscow trusts Beijing is out of their mind. That's the most fake bromance that's ever been formulated. When the Tsar, my name for Putin, when the Tsar goes to bed at night, he does not have nightmares about the U.S. flag flying over Moscow in the next 100 years.
Chinese flag.
He does have a nightmare about the dragon eating Siberia, all the stands, and then Russia falls back to the little fiefdom it was, 700 years ago. Yeah. Are the Chinese playing in this game? It could easily be true. It could easily be true.
All right. So, Twisted, I don't know how much you've gotten, but we're talking a little bit about Kazakhstan, what's going on there, and if you want to add anything, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I want to add to kind of piggyback off what Dan said. The Russian-Chinese alliance is, for lack of a better term, it reminds me a lot of the Russian-German alliance in World War II. I think that, I don't see that lasting as an alliance. It might start off that way, but I think if things kick off, the Chinese are going to stab Russia. Say, Siberia's ours now, along with all the oil and gas fields.
I definitely see where, if you're talking about the Central Soviet states, the stands in particular, that the Chinese will play hardball with the Russians. I definitely see that. I don't see the Chinese trying to do anything horrible in Siberia, just for the main reason that literally the Russians have openly said they will nuke China in the event of doing that. Of course, there's the whole, underhanded part where there's something on the order of about 2 to 3 million Chinese nationals that live within the Russian Federation now. So that's a concern, and they're all, obviously they're all mostly in the Far East District in what used to be former China anyway. That's a thing that the Russians are going to have to deal with. But as far as Siberia writ large, I think China is looking more at Taiwan, the Philippines, and Japan as its first objectives.
They're a very patient group of people. So if on the blackboard in a plotting room, if moving on the stands or moving on parts of Siberia is a 2060 event, the Chinese are perfectly fine with that. I mean, they plotted for 50 years to be parity with us militarily and economically. So, an extremely patient operation over there. So, But the Tsar's no idiot. I mean, he knows who he really needs, who the Russians need to fear in the long run. And in my opinion, we missed a golden opportunity at the collapse of the Soviet Union to link up with the Russians. If it wouldn't have been for sons of bitches like George Soros, who screwed the Russian economy, screwed their currency, who knows where we'd be with them right now?
I think we would have had a hell of an ally in Russia.
Oh my God! I mean,
Yeah.
it's quite possibly, quite honestly, unless the Americas get their shit together, without a Russian-U.S. alliance, I don't know how any of us hold off the Chinese in the next 50 years.
All right, so let's actually move on to the Europeans, because that's where I wanted to go next. We've talked about Ukraine, and we talked about Kazakhstan, but I want to talk about more Central and Western Europe in the regards that a lot of things are going on. Of course, we've had Brexit, we've had France actually rebooting its nuclear industry, and of course, we've had a recent election in Germany, which Angela Merkel has stepped down in favor of what is now a left-wing coalition. Germany used to be not only the economic center of Europe, and still is, but they used to be the military center of Europe, with the Prussian officer corps and, the people that would literally invade half of Europe. They aren't that anymore. They actually have one of the smallest operational armies in Europe. They largely pride themselves on being non-militarized. So, what is the future for Europe, considering that Germany is proud of itself for de-arming, and in Poland right now, last I checked, is openly saying they want to double the size of their military. So, thoughts and questions, comments on that? Don't anybody jump at once. I'll go to Sam, if Sam has anything.
I was eating and not listening to a fucking word you said.
Good job. Damn enlisted.
Say again? Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, long story short, Europe. What are you looking at in Europe that makes that brings attention to you as far as Germany, France, maybe even Poland? I talked about how they're wanting to double the size of their military.
Nobody cares about Poland.
There's
Nobody cares. Oh, okay, Poland. Poland's funny. Did you see that they recently are putting out calls and encouraging basically? They made an economic bill that would give money for every kid over the second one to promote demographic replacement type thing. So Poland is leading the fight for little Timmy by promoting no like dead ass. You're getting a shit ton of money for every child over the first one.
Well, yeah.
But how? They don't have any fucking money. They're poor Slav squatting weirdos, okay?
Okay. There's things I could touch in there, but I'm going to move on to Dan next.
What if I was to tell you, Tyberius, that the formation of NATO had two true concepts. Concept number one was to be prepared for what we realized into World War II, is that the Soviets, like us, had generated a war machine to finish the war that was incredibly capable. The second thing we were really worried about was if we could form a military alliance in Europe that we controlled, and make no doubt we control NATO, we always have, that prevents the Germans, to some degree the French, predominantly the Germans, from ever building a war machine again. They were told they could take their economy and repair their nation, and that the NATO force would defend Europe. And so over the years, Europe became neutered because it was NATO that was their guard. What the Russians realized, probably around 93 or so, when everything went to hell for them, was at some point in time, the United States is not going to care about Europe to the fact of going back to war in Europe for a third time in 120 years. And so we created an environment by creating NATO that checked the German aggression, which was just a natural state of Germany. And it checked, to some degree, the Red Army, although we were cannon fodder of the Red Army. When I used to go, in 1986, I walked up to Checkpoint Charlie, talked to a scout unit, and said, "What's your guys' life expectancy right here?" They said, "About 20 minutes. because there's about 1,600 tanks about 4 miles from here. And so it's crazy to me to see that the Russians may have figured out, and maybe that's what this problem is all about, is that the Russians have been on a campaign. The Tsar has been on a campaign to convince Europe, Western Europe, that the United States is not coming to their aid anymore. You know, with all the speeches Obama gave about we're going to the Pacific, we're going to contain the Chinese. Trump comes along, basically says, screw NATO, you don't pay your bills, we ain't giving you shit. Europe starts to panic. Russia floods Europe with an invasion of immigrants in 2015, destabilizes 4 or 5 governments in Europe, all with the plot of making the Europeans realize we can't defend ourselves. So you hear the Europeans talk about what? The European Defense League. Good luck. It's going to take you 30 years if you can do it. So Europe's in a bad way, because if they think we won't fight for them, then they better start kissing that Russian ring. And I think Nord Stream 2 is the early beginning of the Europeans saying, you know what? It's better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. I think Europe's got huge long-term problems.
I agree with all the central points there, and I want to get Twisted back in on this, and then I've got 2 questions that I want to address to you, Dan. But Twisted, Europe.
Europe, absolutely. You know, let's be real. NATO was the United States. You know, you had a little bit of help with the UK, and it absolutely was. You know, it was a block against the Red Army, but it was also a way, like Dan said, keeping Germany from rearming. All of Europe has relied on the United States. You know, the U.S. military is Europe's army. Let's be real. You know, they all have very small kind of little self-defense forces that could fight a little brush fire somewhere, but they're not going to be able to stand up against the Red Army. And if we choose to ignore the classic NATO doctrine of an attack on one is an attack on all, if we become more isolationist, Europe better step up their game. And I'm not sure that Europe stepping up their game is even a good thing, because historically, Europe, when they've become armed, have had wars with them themselves. You know, Germany, France, England, they're not all like buddies. So there's a lot of moving pieces to it.
I absolutely agree with that. So here's the big question, and as we get to the point where we're going to start closing out, should the Europeans be afraid that the Americans aren't going to come to their defense in the event that somebody picks a fight? As an example, of course, you all know your geography, but for the people at home, you have 2 NATO members that directly border Russia outside of the Kaliningrad district, and that is Estonia and Latvia. And if we're talking about Kaliningrad itself, that adds Lithuania and Poland. So we have 4 NATO members that technically have a direct border with the Russian Federation. And it's not completely out of the ground to say that Russia wouldn't want some of those territories back. So, in the event that something like that were to happen, which is a huge deal, and I'm not trying to super metagame here, can the Europeans be confident that we, the Americans, are going to show the hell up?
We don't have to show up, okay? The biggest fuck you we can do to Russia is have some fucking transgender drone pilot in a fucking mountain in Colorado fucking do a predator strike from an air-conditioned room in a fucking mountain. Like, we don't even, that's the funniest thing. It's like, we don't even have to go over there and do shit, right? We can do a show of force from anything, but, we can do a show of force. However, going to that point would be fucking retarded. We would be literally shooting ourselves in the dick if we took a hard stance military action against Russia and blocking them from doing anything. The same, but at the same time, right? The sanctions bullshit, right? Obviously, that's not working because Russia still doesn't give a fuck, right? They've got China sucking their dick. They've got North Korea sucking their dick. They've got all these other fucking commies sucking their dick, right? It's a giant communist fucking gay orgy over there, and we can't do anything about it other than sanction, because if we take military action, we're not just fighting Russia, right? This would be the first time we would do anything towards Russia in Europe, right? With the exception of like the proxy shit we were doing in Syria, right? We weren't directly fighting Russia, but we were fighting fucking Russia. Anybody who thinks otherwise is a fucking retard. Like literally, this is facts here. But it's stupid. Like, so to do what we have to do, right? Over there would be more harmful than just letting those territories fall. Like, what honestly do we give a shit? Like, Trump already gave us the precedent of like, hey, let's back out, fuck the Kurds, you know, fuck our allies, fuck who we made promises to. Like, so what's the point, right? Trump already said that precedent. We don't give a fuck. And then we ran on fucking Afghanistan. Why do we care about these people in the Eastern Bloc? Okay, fuck these countries. Putin can have them. That like no, seriously, like it's not like a whole I hate these people. It's that these people aren't worth my people. I'm gonna be real. They're not worth the lives of Americans. They're not worth the lives of, you know, hate to say it, but Canadians, right? I don't want ICBMs flying anywhere near here. You know, yeah, we have like modified CRAM type shit, but let's be real, I don't want it to come to that. No, it's not going to be nukes, but like, come on, use your fucking brain. Do these people matter? Am I ever going to meet them in my life? Are they are they in my community? Like, this is my ender next black pill moment, right? Like, I'm never going to meet these people in my life. Why do I care? What's the quality of life going to change? They're already a poor Eastern Bloc country. Russia taking them over is just going to make them a slightly more poor Eastern Bloc country. Nothing is going to change in their lives, nor do I care.
But with Russia recognizing the fact that Europe is weak without NATO, namely the United States, are they going to stop at the Eastern Bloc? Or are they going to move on Germany? Or are they going to move on France?
Listen, why do we care about Germany, right? We had to beat their asses 2 times in a fucking row, okay? Those motherfuckers need to just, like... They, like, sitting here going, we need to defend Germany, when Germany almost took over half of fucking Europe themselves, okay? Germany's gonna do fine. Just find them somebody who hates, like, you know, the global elites, and then, you know, they'll end up taking Europe back for everybody, right?
God damn it, Samantha.
The Germans can do fine. Plus, their weapons and technology are great. I've trained with some of them. Fucking amazing. They're gonna be fine. France, they've got a bunch of fucking people. Half of the French Foreign Legion is rejects from the Eastern Bloc. Okay, they already know the language. They already know the ins and outs. They're all like, you know, sexual predators from Russia that are running to start a new life. Let's let them go. Probably half of them are still Nazi like commanders that ran off. That entire SS battalion that ran off to join the French Foreign Legion to avoid getting caught up for war crimes. I mean, fuck it. They're going to be fine. France is going to be fine. Germany's going to be fine. UK is too busy worrying about, like, Muslims and stabbing sprees and knife buyback programs, okay? So they're going to be a little bit occupied and busy. But the most of Europe will be fine against Russia and poor, like, Eastern Bloc country. They're going to be fine. They have more money in, like, one large city in Europe has more money and global economic buying power than most of Russia combined. They're going to be fine, my dude.
Like Colonel Dan said, you're coming at this from an economic point of view.
Yes, because bullets and bombs cost money.
Yeah, they do.
Food costs money. Getting troops and logistics and planes to places costs money.
Planes, buying all that equipment takes a lot of time.
The only thing Russia's going to have economically, like better off than us, is they have access to oil in that area. So fueling their tanks is going to be great until they run out of fucking rounds to fire out of the tanks. Okay, and then like the Russian troops are going to stop being paid at some point. It's gonna, and then like it'll be like back, right? You know, Holodomor Part 2 is going to happen. You know, people are going to starve to death, but this time it won't be intentional. So it's going to be a giant shit show.
Okay, so 2 things. Number 1, Twisted, you do have a little bit of a hot night going on. I don't know why, but you can see it lighten up. And then Dan is having a migraine over there, although I will say there's a lot of people that do share Samantha's sentiments in the regards that, you know, fuck the Europeans, let them handle themselves. So I think that is something that needs to be addressed. I'm going to let Dan go.
No, it's not fuck the Europeans, right? It's not fuck the Europeans. Like, we help them already, right? We have multiple bases in Germany. We have multiple bases in Italy. We have some in the UK. We share some in France. I don't know why, but whatever. You know, Good job, higher ups. I blame people like Colonel Dan for that decision. Great ideas.
Shut you down. I actually shut you down.
Yeah, well, they shut down some that didn't need to be shut down, and then they opened up ones that were like, "What are you thinking?" But no, we have plenty. Like, they are going to be fine. It's not fuck Europe. It's Europe can handle themselves. It's like it's like me, Tyberius. If you see me in a fight, I don't need you to fight for me or with me. I need you to stay the fuck away and let me do my thing. Europe's gonna be fine, okay? Because like they are the EU now. It's not Germany and France, right? It's the EU. They'd be going to war with the EU. Okay? So Germany, if they got fucked with, France and everybody else would step in, except maybe Italy. They're going down the fascist path again. Maybe just they'll have a second coming of the fascist regime of Mussolini rebirth and just decide, hey, we'll fight Europe with the rest of Russia. So who knows? But most of Europe will band together to fight with Europe against Russia or any foreign invasion of that matter. But like the stands, right? All of them, Dipshitistan, Fuckistan, Pakistan, Rakistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, all these, right? Destiny Stan, Stan from the Eminem album. Nobody cares. Like these are all like sadly the world. It's not just like the world just doesn't care about them. Like they have no GDP. They have people. And they have culture, and that's really all they have going for them. They don't have massive economies. They don't have a large global presence. They don't have a large global purchasing power. They don't have a large influence within the world, right? The only thing, for instance, Belarus. What have you gotten from Belarus? A band named themselves Belarus once. Okay, that's pretty much all you've got. Other than that, there's no real benefit. So if Russia wants to go waste their money to try to take all these places over, and then kill themselves in the process to the point Russia's economically collapsed, and then can be rebuilt again into another nothingness that'll shut themselves down with a stupid idea another 100 years later, like apparently is their cycle. Who cares? I don't care. Europe's going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be chilling. Maybe in Mexico on a beach. Maybe in France also on a beach. I don't know. I don't care.
Okay. I'm going to turn it down to the evil base shutter downer of Colonel Dan, and I want to see the rebuttal here because this is going to be a little spicy.
I'm texting a buddy of mine. I'm trying to get Samantha a job at the State Department. I would love to see him walking on his first day of work with all those Teletubbies. that place needs a bowl in a china shop. I tell you, that's it's a sickening.
Would be thrown out of the State Department. They would look at my resume. And instantly, the one thing that'll get me kicked out of there is, if you remember 2013, we didn't have a lot of jobs for like Rangers or infantry or whatever getting out. So like 2 people called me when I got out, and it was at the time Blackwater while switching over to Academy, and my local SWAT department called me, and I decided to go off contracting for a while. So I don't think anybody with a actual, good positive standpoint with a nice presentation and you got to look good and look the part and have like the history for they won't take me. They're like, you worked with Blackwater, you're a stain on this fucking existence. I'm like, dude, I was a medic in Syria, leave me alone.
I dealt with that organization in the UAE.
Hey, we were good people.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, what do you got?
Look at it this way. If this is going to happen, we have to make a decision as a nation. At what point do we support the fight? And if we do fight, what level of fight do we get into? Is it past the Ukraine? Is it the issue of what, Romania? Or who knows? But the one thing, if we have an administration that has its shit together, and I'm not confident on this topic that we do, the one thing we could do at the end of the day is we could turn the Ukraine into Syria. The Russians screwed Obama in Syria and messed everything up that we thought we were trying to fix. We were screwing it up already anyway. I was part of that fiasco. But if we could take the Ukraine, and if the Russians have struggled with Belarus, let's see how bad they invade it. They go Kiev to Odessa. That's the part they want. They do it. They sign some kind of peace treaty that, you know, our State Department would probably run out there and sign it before they even read it. And if it was all said and done, can you turn Ukraine into Syria? Can you get a 7 to 9 year civil war going in the Ukraine? Because the Russians, although their footprint has been light in the Donbass region, the Russians have had a hard time in the Donbass region. It's just the terrain, it's the geography, it's the seasons that they have to deal with. The second thing I'll tell you is, don't underestimate what Putin has been trying to do for the last 8 years. He's been trying to pull Turkey out of the NATO alliance because he knows that will help cripple NATO. He used Turkey, Erdogan, who's a complete batshit crazy guy, and he used him to create this human wave in 2015 once the Russians really got Syria cranking, once they bombed the shit out of Aleppo. And so the Turks have long-term heritage with the Crimea, and they're not happy with what the Russians have done in the Crimea. The drones that the Ukrainians are flying to take out Russian little green men artillery are Turkish drones. Azerbaijan, Armenia, you know, the Turks kicked the ass out of the team the Russians were supporting. We need to figure out quickly how to leverage all of that, because we can turn this into the kind of nightmare to where the Russian people come back to their czar and say, hey, look, you know, the Russians got tired of Afghanistan because the people in Russia got tired of the body bags. And if we have to do this, instead of fighting the Russians, let's just make it a shitstorm for them. And we can probably leverage Turkey to do that, because the Turks have a huge bone. There's no love between the Russians and the Turks historically. I mean, you go back and look at some of the bloodiest wars in that part of the European continent, it's the Russians and the Ottomans. So, but do we have an administration? Do we have a group of people? Can Austin sit down and do this? I don't think there's a chance in hell that he can figure this out. Can this Teletubby in the State Department do it? No way in hell. And can you keep the poor bastard in the White House awake past 7 o'clock at night? What's going on? I don't know. So I don't know if we're in the position, Tiberius, to do the things we could do to make this screw the Russians up. And the last thing I'll tell you is, I know we're seeing a lot of tanks. I know we're seeing artillery. We're seeing rocket units. We're seeing all that kind of kinetic energy bullshit. But when the Russians go, if they go, look at this war starting in a very different manner. Be thinking in terms of cyber warfare.
Oh, did he cut out completely on us?
Oh, yeah, he did.
He's been hitting us a little, or he's been spacing out of there a little bit.
I couldn't agree with you more there, Colonel Dan.
Oh,
back to you, Tiberius.
So, Dan, you cut out on us. You cut out on us for a minute. It's not your fault. The connection's getting a little getting a little off. We had some problems with you earlier, but we got most of what you said. So the last thing you were talking about was the final note. Was you were just talking?
Yeah.
You were just talking about how we don't know if we have the leadership to do it, but you were talking about the cyber warfare, and that was the last word we heard.
Yeah, this could easily not start as a kinetic war. Maybe in Donbass, maybe a scaled version in Donbass region. But watch the Russians try and make a point to Europe as to what they can do to them with probable denial, third-party hackers. You know, all the shit we put up with all the time. I tell you, in this country, SCADA software is our Achilles heel, but it's 10 times as bad in Europe. And the Russians can do some things and then sit back and say, we didn't do that. It came from the Philippines. It's some 16-year-old in the Philippines. So this could start pretty squirrely if it goes.
All right, fair enough. Does anyone have any final notes or final thoughts? Because we just broke over an hour, and we need to get back to the Mask Off crew. So does anyone have anything that they want to add to sound off with? Take that as a no. Okay.
I love the way you do this
No.
because I love the fact it's not these blood sports. I don't take part in these Twitter, first world nation, echo chamber, sociological, what's my gender. I don't give a shit about all that. That can't invade my ranch. So I like when you do these in these professional manners about topics that really should matter to people and not, wokeness or something else. I don't have time for all that
Well,
shit.
I was pushing us to talk this topic because I don't think this topic is being talked about enough. I don't think the news cycle.
You haven't known me that long. I've talked about this for about a year and a half now.
Well,
I knew
no,
it was coming
I haven't known you
hardcore.
that long, Samantha, but it's in the Twitter sphere, in the Twitch organization, on the news, all of it. It's not being talked about, and I don't understand it. It's a flashpoint that.
No, yeah, I don't understand that either, and I have that
it-
same problem. I was over there for a short while, and I fucking knew this was coming, but like I thought it was coming a lot sooner and a lot worse.
To me,
I'm
this is a lot
surprised it's been held
scarier
up.
than anything else going on with.
Well,
You know.
but you have other things going on in a few other countries, but not as bad as this.
Yeah.
The way that Russia's position right now is just a curtain fall. Literally, so if you look at like I'm going to use stupid terms here, but then again, mind you, I'm enlisted, right? Looks like a giant Pac-Man, right? Where you have that lower thing over by Crimea, right? But that's useless. That's to keep people from running out. All they have to do on that top right border is sweep down like a fucking grandfather clock, right? All they have to do is sweep. They can roll from east to west and take whatever they need and fast as fuck. And they already know Ukraine's military capabilities because they've been disabling them and taking over on like a light invasion for years now.
I don't disagree with most of that. So,
No.
all right. So to wrap this all up, I kind of stepped out of the last part of that, but you guys have said everything that I largely wanted to say. And Dan's actually even more informed with the intelligence community than I am, which is always good because sometimes I can't keep up with it all. So, without further ado, I have been joined by Colonel Dan11 on Twitch. You can find him on a few other things. I believe you even have a TikTok to promote your stuff. Which, how do you like that, by the way?
I like it. TikTok hates it because I talk about Twitch on TikTok, and they actually tell me that's a community standard violation.
Interesting. All right, fair enough. And then, so you stream Monday through Friday. At what time is it exactly? I sometimes I get lost.
8 Central to 10 Central.
All right, so, and of course, Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I've dropped in on his streams every now and again. They're very akin to PowerPoint presentations in which he is talking about a particular subject of the day. He'll walk you through it. Sometimes there's some visual aids there. Samantha would actually learn a lot there. It almost has a coloring book sometimes. But
I just shot you a follow, Colonel Dan.
Yeah, I need the coloring book. I'm not gonna lie.
But I appreciate having an officer, let alone an 06, here with us this evening because I don't get very many officers through my community, and of course, high-ranking officers that are always respected because there's not a lot of you guys out there. The enlisted are there to fill the ranks, but you guys fill the brass.
Just remember, I was almost 7 years enlisted. I was a 60.
Oh,
Yeah, that impresses the hell out of me.
almost 6 years. I'm just kidding, sir. I'll shut up now.
Hey, I respect officers that win Mustang. You gotta
I've laid out my stance on officers. I disrespect the fuck out of most officers. They came in infantry straight from West Point thinking they knew some shit, and that's why we go to training sites and wire up fucking flashbangs at eye level thinking they wanted to fucking be a point man, and then they get to go blind and deaf for a couple days and learn to fucking listen to the lower fucking Joes. But anyway.
Any new butter bar that has any sense is going to listen to his enlisted guys. They know their shit.
I have a counseling statement that I want to get framed, and it was literally there was a LT that showed up, and he was saying something. He was trying to act big and tough, and I had already just got fresh off of extra duty from a prior Article 15. The first words out of my mouth were like, "Sir, I have spent more time jerking off in fucking porta potties in Afghanistan than you have done doing anything productive with your life."
Gotta get the combat jack
Dude,
in.
fuck that motherfucker. That guy was a bitch. He lasted about 2 months, so they fucking transferred him out.
All right, so the hot spicy one is our enlisted friend here today. That was Samantha Banana, which is one of them.
13 and a half years, enlisted, U.S. Army Ranger, infantry, reclassed over to medic. Also done 4 rounds on contracting, once with Blackwater. Then they changed their name, and I did 3 rounds with Academy in Syria, the Horn of Africa, and a few other places. But been around, and just got love for Joe's.
I appreciate you bringing the spice, Samantha. That was actually quite interesting in the ways that you brought it. And you did bring up some points that I think a lot of Americans do agree with. And then, of course, we have our Harrier pilot, Twisted Aviator. Thanks for being here tonight, man.
Glad to be here, Todd. Glad to be on board.
All right, so we're going to be rejoining the Mask Off podcast. If anyone is familiar with that, it's basically our panel show that we've been doing. Used to be just on Sundays, but we become victims of success because of communities like this, where we bring in not only laymen, but also the experts, is that everyone can largely get together, have a real chat about real issues, or at least what we think are real issues, and, just have that real wholesome chat between friends. And we're going to be returning to that here in just a moment. But for anyone who is watching this, whether it's on Twitch or the YouTube, I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank everyone for watching. And I hope that we can do this again, because this was an absolute joy for me. And, of course, talking Geopol is my big thing. So without further ado, we'll catch you next time. And the stream's not ending. We're just going to be rolling the outro. So we'll see you soon.
Stream is over.